Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruber, and I am so excited to introduce our very mysterious guest today, Terri Coffee McDuffie. Woohoo!
Hey, Terri.
Welcome aboard, Terri. So I have known Terri for many years. I have taken her self-defense classes. She works a lot with women and girls and children, men alike. But I thought it would be really exciting to have Terri on to talk about ways to stay safe. Now, we talk on the show about unlocking your potential. And I think this is a great addition because, you know, if we're walking around feeling unsafe or if we find ourselves in a scary physical situation, we want to know how to deal with ourselves. So I'm really excited to have Terri on board. So Terri, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, how you started doing what you do?
Thank you, Kathy and Jason. I've been doing martial arts for 36 years. And
how is that you're 29?
She was a child prodigy.
She's a child prodigy.
Thank you. Yeah, I started when I was one, and really, I did start in my 20s. But I've been doing self-defense for teaching women in self-defense for over 30 years. And when I became a martial artist, there were very few women that were training in the martial arts, and only 10% were really being served these empowering tools that I was really enjoying and making myself feel more empowered to live larger. And I thought I needed to find a way to help other women out there in particular, because there were so few of us that were invested in long-term martial arts schools, that I could give them a few tips and have them walk out the door and just feel safer for it. So about 30 years ago, I started teaching in the martial arts school, some of the mothers and daughters and sisters that were just sitting there watching the male brothers or husbands all doing self-defense. And I started to teach them for free on the side to give them some tips and ideas how to be protected. And eventually it led to me starting a business, Santa Barbara Women's Self-Defense, 12 years ago, where I'm running groups and private lessons, moms and daughters, power up and wind downs with women and wine, and going out to colleges and serving the sororities out there, and just starting to invest in the community to bring more empowerment to all of our Santa Barbara community members that are more left out of the picture, in particular women and young girls.
And I think this is such an important thing because so many women don't think about this. We walk around in a state of somewhat hesitancy and fear a lot of the time. And I remember having a conversation with a client of mine, a male client, big guy, very misogynistic. And this was one of those times when yet another sexual accusation came out about pick a celebrity or pick a president. And he said, I just don't understand why these women don't come forward and da-da-da. And I said, please understand. I said, you're a big guy. I said, you have no idea what it's like to walk around wondering if every guy that walks towards you is going to be a threat. I said, you guys are bigger than us. You're typically stronger than us. You're often faster than us. You can easily overpower us. And then he looks at me and he goes, and I have a gun. Like, right.
Yeah, don't make it.
You feel so much safer. I said, but you actually really have no idea what it's like to walk around feeling vulnerable. And what I appreciate about you, Terri, is, and like I said, I've done your one of your classes. You did that for my birthday party one year. I appreciate how you specifically empowered the women and said, you can do this, and you showed really usable tips to do that. So I so appreciate what you're doing. You're helping keep an entire population safe, and empowered, which I appreciate.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when I was a child, I was in a domestic violence situation with my father being the aggressor, physically and mentally and emotionally to all of us. And we had sisters, I had two sisters and my mom. So it was all girl environment. And we felt very controlled, subjugated, and isolated. It was very scary growing up that way. And I thought when I could find a way to see the light and feel powerful, I would share it with others. And I thought that at a very young age because it felt so oppressive. And I could only just imagine other people who were in far worse situations, in particular, young women and girls and mothers and grandmas and all the people in our family members who stay so strong and stoic and don't complain about these things and continue persevering and be the warriors that we are. But at the same time, we have all this scar tissue inside from all this abuse or control or people exerting their dominance on us, and it makes us a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I think it was, because again, the purpose of our podcast is kind of help people unlock their potential, right? And so again, some people might be looking at this like self-defense. Why are we talking about that, right? But we've talked a lot about fear and about things that are holding people back, right? And so again, if some of that fear is in fear of, being controlled, being subjugated, a physical safety issue, to me, it seems like, again, Santa Barbara Women's Self-Defense, right? That's a great title too, but it's almost, to me, kind of like you're giving them self-confidence as well as self-defense, right? Because in helping them to kind of release some of that fear, because they know they can take care of themselves if they get into a situation. Right. So, I mean, how are some of the ways, obviously, in self-defense, you're teaching people moves and other stuff like that. But again, I know martial arts, a lot of it is about mindset as well. So maybe kind of help share with us how you help women with this, both in the skills, but also maybe some of the mindset stuff.
The strange thing about all of this self-defense stuff is that it's far more mental than physical. And it involves far more than the punch and the kick that you'll end up learning. It's much more about developing the confidence and sense of been there, done that type moment, and feeling that you're capable and that you can do. So I usually spend about an hour in a 2-hour workshop breaking down the barriers that we put up emotionally to keep ourselves from hurting other people's feelings, making sure they're all safe before ourselves. And it does take quite a long time to get women and young girls to the point to where they will react with power and purpose when they feel they are intimidated or confronted or in fear, and they need to take a step forward rather than a step back. So the idea of being a nurturing culture of women and girls is very prevalent to us, and it's socialized into us constantly. So we're always thinking about others before ourselves. And it is really a hard thing to get the women and young girls to a point to where they will say, I will hurt somebody if I have to in order to protect myself, bottom line. And once we get to that point, they never go back in the box in terms of feeling that sense of self-esteem and confidence to know what they can do and not feel I think I can, but say I know I can.
Yeah, and it was so telling. So for I don't remember which birthday it was, but I had a strong and sexy party. And I invited every woman I knew, and it was so much fun. I put photos of powerful women around the room, and everybody had to name who it was, and I had a prize for that. They had a how well do you know Kathy quiz because it was my birthday. I could do whatever the hell I want. And then we learned burlesque. We learned burlesque dancing, and I didn't tell anybody they were doing self-defense. So we did the burlesque class. It's all women, and all of a sudden this big guy walks in, and you could tell, like, there was a palpable, like, all of a sudden all the women kind of went, like, because we were with, having wine and drinking and doing all this fun with girls, and all of a sudden this guy walks in and the energy of the room changed. Someone walked up to me and said, is he supposed to be here? And I said, yeah, we're all going to kick his ass in a second. And they're like, what? and I had told everybody, wear what makes you feel strong and sexy. So there were women in miniskirts, there were women in dresses, there were women in 5-inch heels, there were women in boots, there were women. And the one woman said, once Terri started and introduced what we were doing and introduced the guy, and we started working, the one woman went to go take her shoes off, and I said, what are you doing? She goes, well, I can't kick him in these shoes. And I said, oh, okay. So if you're jumped in an alley and you're about to be raped, are you going to say, excuse me, let me kick off these shoes? No, you're going to kick his ass. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to kick his ass. You know, because I wanted people to not be ready for this, because you're not going to be. I mean, you don't know, you know. And I read The Gift of Fear. For anybody listening or watching that has not read The Gift of Fear,
Yes.
please, please, please go read The Gift of Fear. And he talks about, Gavin de Becker talks
Yes.
about that so much of, you know, the woman's like, oh, well, if I get out of the elevator now, he's going to take it personally, and I don't want to hurt his feelings. And, you know, 2 minutes later, she's being raped in an elevator because you're getting into an enclosed metal box with someone you don't know. And it's about listening to those instincts. And we've talked about that on the show. Also, we're listening to these instincts with business and listening to these instincts with communication. So how do we, Terri, encourage people to tap into those instincts when society is telling us, no, you might hurt the guy's feelings? How do we rectify that in our own brains?
Well, it's a matter of putting women and young girls into a place where they feel they're worth it. And it does take a little bit of talking to them and making them feel powerful and strong to where they feel, yeah, you know what, I am worth it. And I need to be here for others in my life. I need to nurture and take care of. Even if they don't have their own self-worth at that high level as they do others in their life, they need to think about how they can't be present to go home to nurture and care for their friends, family members, children, sisters, brothers, all the people that we want to continue to nurture and take care of. But not only that, but lift up, that we have to lift ourselves up first.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I would think also there's something about educating the men around us. Because if I get into an elevator with a guy and I feel uncomfortable, even if he was not going to do anything, I would hope that the guy would have the mindset to go, oh, she's a single woman, I'm a single man, she was uncomfortable. You know, I would hope their feelings wouldn't be hurt, because I think we're at a place in the society, especially with what's gone on with the Me Too movement and everything, that a lot of men now get the, oh, maybe she was scared of me thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how do we educate the men in this circumstance, Jason? How do we educate the men in this too? I mean, you're a middle-aged white guy.
Yeah, I am, right? And well, it's funny because, you know, you're using the example of the elevator, and I've been all over the world, million miles on my poor old body, kind of a deal, right? And there's actually some countries in the Middle East where it is actually inappropriate
Mm-hmm.
to get in an elevator with an unattended woman, right? So you would actually, you know, we would wait, and, you know, the women would get into one elevator, you know, unless they had, you know, their husband or someone
Mm-hmm.
else was with them. You wouldn't get into the elevator. You would actually, you knew that was what you actually did.
Interesting.
And I remember there were actually sometimes, you know, where it was like, I knew that, so I would kind of hesitate and hold back. And there were some times like that where a young family would get on, and the man would actually say, it's okay, come with us, you know, and actually invite me into the elevator, where I was just kind of trained that, you know, we probably shouldn't do that. And I mean, again, you know, as a middle-aged white guy, we should be sensitive to this, right? I mean, if you see a woman that appears to be nervous, right, make a joke, you know, keep your distance, do something. I mean, I didn't even really consciously think about this, but I even try to do that, right? It's like, if I know that there's a single female that's walking, for example, I try to give her more distance, or to
Mm-hmm.
not make it seem like I'm following her, because it's like, I don't want her to feel uncomfortable,
Right.
Because again, it may be nothing, but we don't know what people have gone through.
Yeah.
And, you know, the one thing that I learned about the Me Too movement was, holy shit, how many women have been sexually abused and assaulted.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, I mean, people that I know, and it's like, I had no idea. And because of that, we can't make any assumptions about why somebody might act a certain way, because, you know, if you were physically and sexually abused as a child, or you've gone through a rape, that's some pretty serious shit to deal with. And I'm going to give that person lots of room, lots of, I don't know what the right word is, right? But
Mm-hmm. That
compassion.
space.
and space in realizing that's some pretty tough stuff to deal with. And I'm not a scary guy, but if you feel threatened by me, then it's okay. It's totally cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'll back off. I'll that's fine, right?
Yeah. You scare me, Jason.
Do I scare you?
Yeah.
But I know you can kick my ass because especially
totally
now I know that Terry's trained you.
Terry taught me to, and two,
because you can.
I could just probably kick your ass.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into some usable tips before we once again run out of time, because we do that all the time. So, Terry, what is one of the first things, and this is going to be, for our auditory learners, they're going to be ecstatic because we don't have video to show anybody, but what are some tips, just some clear off tips that we can give, not only just to the women who are listening, but also to the men as well, to stay more safe and to be more present? Because I think presence is so much part of it as well, if I'm correct. So what are some tips that we can use?
Well, the number one self-defense tip that everybody can practice daily is awareness in a large way. And it's being not only aware of what's around you positively, but also the negative factors, and embracing it all. And walking into a room and being in charge, large and in charge, in terms of opening it out, looking at all the details, the exits, the entrances, where you can feel safer, what people you feel better standing next to. It's going to be how your body posture is showing its strength and power. How you stand straight, you walk heavier, you swing in your arms because you're actively physical and you're ready to move to action. You have eye contact, not for too long, but looking at people with power and purpose and intention, which is hard for a lot of us women, and especially women of older generations, really hard to have contact because we were told not to, that it would cause confrontation if you start to feel uncomfortable, but to have that eye contact. And spatial boundaries, as part of that awareness, is being able to present distance between yourself and others, and allow all your circumference around yourself to have a safety bubble of comfort level, so that you feel you can move to action if you have to. But awareness is huge, but it doesn't only tap into your instincts, it taps into your life experiences. Because like Gavin de Becker's book, which I love, and it's really what started me launching into teaching the self-defense, was you have to be aware and tap into, oh, I've been this before, it didn't end up very well, I'm not going to go into that situation again, I'm going to move around it, choose differently, make safer choices for myself. So the combination of the instincts and life experiences, what you have to tap into all the time, and not think it's just you. You're the one feeling uncomfortable, you're being strange, you're the one that's hypersensitive, is to think, no, there's a reason this is making me feel uncomfortable, unsafe, and then move to a place you do feel safer. And if that's moving towards people, waving at people down the block that you don't know, so that you can act, there's more than one person around you that's keeping their eyes on you when it's not true. Walking into stores when you start to feel uncomfortable, instead of just continuing down the block. There's a lot of resources around you can tap into daily, but you have to be aware that they're there for you.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that really drives me crazy about, well, all of us, but especially the up and coming generations, is we're all walking around like this.
Yeah.
And if you're walking down the street doing this, and I've seen women at night so acted with their headset in, oh my God, I could come up behind them and grab them. And I've tried to instill that, especially when I leave dance class at night. We used to be in an area of town that wasn't super duper nice, and it was dark. There were no street lights. And I see all these girls in their scantily, I just sweated for an hour outfits. They're walking to their cars. They're not aware of where they are. Whereas I put my phone down, I had my water bottle. Sometimes if I had to park far away, I would bring my flashlight/taser, because I'm like, I don't know who's out there, and I said to so many women, why don't you be present as you walk to your car? And once you're in your car, then you can play with your phone. But you don't know who is approaching you. And if you are so distracted, and you're an easy target, they're going to not pick me because I'm walking with purpose. I'm meeting people's eyes. Like you said, I make myself look bigger than I am, as opposed to these, easy target. And it's kind of the same thing just in life. It's like, are you making yourself an easy target, or are you presenting yourself in a way that is going to be more powerful, more productive, more, larger than life, to not make yourself a victim in any number of ways. So I think that those are really good tips of just being aware of where you are and what's around you, and know your outs, and know those resources that are close to you.
Yeah, one of the first things I have to address is the head down situation of people texting and then talking on the phone, and whether it be speaker or to their ear, and they're very focused on only that one thing that's going on and not everything else around them.
Yeah.
You know, keep your conversations short. Go to your social places where there's more people, so that you can sit there and feel safer as you're engaging in a long conversation. Say, I'm sorry, I'm walking right now. I'll talk to you when I get there. And when you're texting, you know, keep your head up and maybe do one little letter at a time, and then head back up, much like a prairie dog, you know, as you're walking around. Yeah, that's the kind of the visual that I want to present to them, is how aware, you know, animals are all the time of
Yes.
things around them. Even if their head is down, busy eating something, you know, they pop up and their eyes are looking all around. Their bodies and minds are ready to move to action. So just people keeping themselves in the moment and being present, much like when we, and it's funny you said, talked about the car, is when you get in your car, your awareness is heightened. Of course it has to be. You're driving yourself from point A to point B. You're looking to see who's around you and who might walk in front of your car, and how you need to stop quickly, or the boundaries between yourself and others as you drive, if they're swerving in or behind you too close. Why do you get out of your car and lose that awareness? Drive yourself, your body, to your destinations with that same heightened awareness. We embrace that as something we just need to do, and it's natural in a car. Take that with you as you get out of your car and walk into your places of where you want to enjoy for the day, or walk down the street.
Yeah, that's great. Jason, thoughts right now?
Well, yeah, I love that you brought up the prairie dog example for a couple of reasons. We have a little inside joke about talking about animals on the podcast. So thank you.
We've not had a prairie dog yet. So
we haven't talked about prairie dogs yet. But I think that's a great visual, because like you said, I mean, they're a little skittish animals, but they're not, you see exactly like what you said, right? They're doing whatever. They're kind of, you know, sitting around, they're just kind of looking, they're doing what they're doing, and they just kind of look around. And if they sense danger, then they take some action, right? And again, I think, and this is what I'm kind of hearing, you know, throughout, is if you're feeling these things, then be more heightened, right? If you're feeling that, God, that guy's kind of creepy, or I'm getting like this weird vibe, well, there's probably a reason. The guy's probably giving off a weird vibe. So, you know, again, try to distance yourself, try to, you know, be more aware of what's actually going on. And, you know, I know we've been talking about women, but this has actually happened to me a few times in my life, right? Where you end up in a part of town that, you know, maybe you turn the corner the wrong way in a couple of cities, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, what's going on here, right? So this even applies to guys. But as we were talking too, because I think it's, you know, we're trying to give people tips, but one of the things that I just heard too is, you know, it's like, if you're trying to learn how to swim, you can read all the books you want about how to swim, how to do the different strokes, but the only way you actually learn to swim is actually doing it. Right. And so again, I think even, you know, I'm glad that, you know, Terri, you're there, and that other people are there, because really these are things that you actually have to practice.
Yep.
Just like swimming. But I like this whole idea too of how self-defense can actually improve your self-confidence, right? Along the way. So, you know, maybe talk about that a little bit, about how, you know, actually practicing and doing some of these things, whether it's going to classes, you know, which should be kind of an obvious, but are there even some other things, you know, that you can do and kind of practice on your own as well, to help us just be more aware and more safe?
Well, beyond the awareness, which is huge, one of the things everybody can do without taking any classes from me or reading any books, as you say, is just to present the spatial boundaries with your arms. Palms out, hands up, palms out always means back off, never means come to me. And when you're starting to feel uncomfortable around people, could be social setting, could be one-on-one, then you want to take your arms and either fold them at your waist or just have them hang out at your waist level so that you can move to immediate action, and you can block, you can strike, you can distance yourself, you can push. There's so many things you're engaged to do because